You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Tuesday, July 23rd, a special Tuesday edition of 49K today in the off season, but it's the first day of training camp, so it feels appropriate, and I'm very excited for today's guest, someone who's had me on their show quite some time at KTVU. Now I get to interview him, Sal Casteneda. Sal, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I was just looking for a tweet because I want people to join us. So you just tweet this out because I want people to be on here.
Yes.
All right.
And I
All
did.
right. So I am doing great. Did you tag me? I don't know. I'm doing great. Maybe I'll do that later because I want to talk with you. I am doing great, and I'm looking forward to another season of the 49ers. I'm finally over that overtime loss that no one seems to want to talk about, and I don't either. But I'm somewhat over it. Yeah, I mean, come on, Steph. I'm a lifelong 49ers fan. The only difference between my younger years and now is when I was younger and I was a kid and my dad was taking me to Niners games, they never lost the Super Bowl. So, once they lost one, I'm thinking, oh, gosh, I didn't think they could lose. I mean, obviously, that's hyperbole, but it just kind of seems like it's so weird. They've gotten all the way there and they haven't won, and they've had so many chances. They've been in the NFC Championship game in the last 5 seasons to the Super Bowl twice, and they haven't hit the promised land.
Yeah, I know. That's got to be a really frustrating feeling, I'd have to imagine. And I think about that often because, like, me as a fan, like, I've only followed the team since I was, like, about 12 years old. So not to date myself, but I am dating myself. That's, like, 2 decades ago, right? So that was after all of the Super Bowls. So the way that I see this team now, unfortunately, it's a team that gets there and has gotten there. My first memory of the Super Bowl that I saw was the one against the Ravens, right? And I remember that game and thinking in the lead up to it, they're not going to lose. They've never won. I mean, they've never lost a Super Bowl, and I know it's a different team, right? But I just felt that way. They were going to win because they've never lost before. But since then, it's been quite the opposite. It's been, well, I always have it in the back of my mind that even if they get there, they're going to lose. Like that's crazy to feel.
Yeah.
But knowing like the feeling of having seen them won so many times, like, what's that level of disappointment like? Because I think my level of disappointment is different than maybe yours, having seen and having the expectation that they're only going to win.
The 49ers teams of my childhood were so dominant that they would always find a way. I remember the last time I saw them in a Super Bowl before what I call the modern era was when Steve Young took them to the Super Bowl against the Chargers. And they were wearing those white pants I don't like so much, but they won. They got it done, right? Steve Young got the monkey off his back. And I thought, okay, I didn't realize there was going to be such a drought between that one and then the next time. I think, when Harbaugh came, he kind of restored respectability to the program. And when they went to the Super Bowl again, I guess I might have been in denial because remember, professional sports, nothing is guaranteed. But I still was in that mindset, like, they're in the Super Bowl. They have such a rich legacy. They are going to win. And now they haven't won it. And like you, I've been sort of, I don't know. I am more nervous now, Steph, when I watch the Niners than I was back then. Back then, they always got it done. These teams are great. Don't get me wrong. This 49ers team is great, but I'm still more nervous because I really hate the feeling of getting all the way there and then having to, sulk away after an overtime loss.
Well, that's the thing, right? I think we know how good this team is. And, I can't really speak from experience of having watched, those former Super Bowl teams play and know that level of dominance. When you look at this team and their level of dominance, how different is that? Like, because I look at this team and I'm like, on paper and, looking at the regular season that they had, there's no reason this team should lose a Super
Right.
Bowl. Like they're too good. So I guess like what's the difference for you there with this current team? And like, do you have any reason why you think they haven't been able to get it done?
I think football has changed. I think back in the DeBartolo days, the cap wasn't instituted, and Eddie DeBartolo just went out and spent. Other teams had the right to spend too. The Cowboys, the Steelers, some of the other legacy teams back then, they also spent. But Eddie DeBartolo just spared no expense. He went out and got the best players, the best coaches. I mean, George Seifert was just a defensive coordinator. You had talent, and now I think the NFL, there's more parity. I remember when that word was thrown around, I guess in the 90s when, everything was kind of evened out. And I like it. I like it because that means the teams that are down always do have a chance. Because remember, the 49ers were down for a while too, with the Jim Druckenmiller era. I don't know if you remember that guy, but I mean, the 49ers were down for a while. They were a joke. In between their last Super Bowl run and where we are now, there were a couple of years where it's like, wow, the 49ers are ever going to be competitive. So I do like parity, but I think that's what's changed a little bit from that era to now.
Yeah, and so like when you look at this team and you see like Kyle Shanahan, and obviously he's had a lot of success with this team, and every time that this team is relatively healthy, they get to the NFC Championship at the very least, right? So
Mhm.
what do you think is missing though? Like there seems to be maybe a pattern, right, of getting there and getting close and just not being able to get over that hump. So in your mind, like what is this team missing?
I just remember last year I was happy that Steve Wilkes was gone. I think that he was given the keys to the car, and he did okay. I mean, you can't say he was terrible because he got the team to the Super Bowl, but I don't think the guys played for him like they played for the other defensive coordinators that I've seen. And I think it's akin to being given a sports car that's the fastest, but coming in second or third because the driver wasn't quite experienced enough. I don't dislike Steve Wilkes. I just think that you can get a lot more from this defense. Also, injuries. When Dre Greenlaw went out, um,
Yeah,
you know that was a huge blow, and people are saying next man up. You cannot next man up Dre Greenlaw. Um,
right.
that's just tough luck. Some of it is luck. And also, you have to hand it to the Chiefs. The Chiefs are a good team. They have Patrick Mahomes, I think he's a once in a lifetime type of quarterback. He's in the same conversation as Tom Brady. Brock Purdy isn't there yet. Maybe Brock Purdy will get there. I hope he will. But you have currently going against that guy who never seems to. That guy just muscles up and puts the team on his back. I mean, I think that if we were playing anyone else, we probably would have won. But Patrick Mahomes is just one of those legacy quarterbacks in the same conversation as Marino and Montana and Brady. So there's no shame in losing to Mahomes. It's just tough luck on the Niners that the circumstances are what they were.
Yeah, exactly. And, now trying to move on from another Super Bowl loss, a lot of the same, players that were part of that 2019 team, facing this loss again. And so, like, I keep thinking to myself, like, that's a pretty big burden to carry and going into this season. And I just hope they can get over the mental hurdle of that, because those same guys are like the cornerstones of this team. And if they show any, I guess, fair weathering of faith, like it, that will trickle down. So I guess that's been my concern. So going into 2024, it's a new year, right? You said you're getting over the loss. It took us all off season, but we're here, we're ready to be hurt again. Training camp started today, and there's a lot of questions about this team. You mentioned Steve Wilkes no longer in the picture, so now we have Nick Sorensen. Then they added Brandon Staley. There's a lot of like new faces in the building. A lot of the
Uh-huh.
same returning players, but still, there's something new to be excited about, to kind of question. So, what are kind of sort of some of those things for you?
Well, the biggest thing for me is the defense. It's just a cliche, but defense wins championships. I think the offense is all set. I happen to think that Brandon Ayuk, he showed up to camp today,
Yeah.
which is amazing, right? I happen to think they're probably going to get that done. He has no leverage really, and they have McCaffrey, they have Purdy. We're still going to have to pay. We can talk about that later. But defense, I told you in a kind of a funny message, I was being a little bit dramatic, but I wasn't really that impressed with the front four of the. I wasn't impressed with your boy Nick Bosa. However, I would never let him go. Right? Okay, so he had kind of a middle year. I think he's due for a good year. I think that if the defensive line and the back end of that defense, the cornerbacks and the safeties, Talanoa Mufanga is coming back. That guy was also a big loss, right? You lose a guy like that. You have other guys who are, coming back. They drafted, what's that kid that they drafted? I'm forgetting his name now, but college super. Not a cornerback.
Renardo Green.
Yes. All right. So that kid might be able to play right away. I mean, from what I've seen, right, that kid might actually earn a starting spot. So I really think that the defense and shutting those, quarterbacks down, because we had some adventures out there in that secondary, especially late in the season where, the good quarterbacks could pick you apart, right? I'm not so concerned with the offense. Yeah, the offense had some bad days here and there, but I don't know. Defense to me is what I'm looking at, and they're already elite. I think they need to be like elite 1A now.
1A. Well, I agree that like if you look at 2023 defense, it was really good on paper, and of course, like you got Nick Bosa getting that big extension, and you think what can go wrong. This should be easy for Steve Wilkes. Well, we saw what happened. They did lose Eric Armstead in the offseason, or let him go due to the cap constraints that this team is now under. And so like the new faces are gonna have to buy in and step up as well. But I guess like I'm optimistic about that too, and just how those new pieces are gonna be able to contribute. Eric Armstead, I think he's one of those guys that will be missed, I think, in the interior of that defensive line. But now I think the 49ers will probably go like by committee a little bit with rotating some guys a little bit more. And Leonard Floyd opposite Bosa, I'm excited for that too. I think Bosa has a better season this year. I saw earlier Bet Online has him at 12.5 sacks. I'm like, you bet the over. That's easy.
Yeah. You know what? Nick Bosa, I think everyone's allowed to have kind of like a middle year. And I also think that people know about him, right? So they stack their plays to go away from him a little bit. They kind of, this is the NFL. There's not going to be one super dominant player the whole time on the defensive line that doesn't get planned against a little bit, right? They know he's there. I think that the line is going to gel a little bit more. And also, as you mentioned, they lost Eric Armstead, but it's different losing him through free agency than losing him to injury, right? Because now they have time to plan. When you lose someone to injury, it's like, well, next man up. But because of the cap, you don't have super, super deep benches. I liked Eric Armstead. I really do. But now they know going in that they're going to have to replace that. And like you said, they're making plans.
Yeah, so going back to, being strapped for cash a little bit in this cap situation that the 49ers are in. It's a good problem to have. It means you're a very good team with a lot of very good players that are demanding the top money. But it's complicated, obviously, as we've seen, and none more than this offseason, it's felt like, with Brandon Ayuk, his extension talks going this far into the offseason, although most of their extensions do happen at this juncture of the off season within like the next couple.
Every year it's someone different, right, Steph? I mean, that Nick Bosa, maybe because he came in so late, he was not in shape for the first few games. Let's hope that doesn't happen with Brandon. I really like Brandon and the connection he has with Brock Purdy. You know, I like the way that Brandon Ayuk runs the middle of the field. I like the way he blocks. I mean, try to tell some of the other prima donna NFL receivers to block, right? He plays off the football too, right? So I think they get that deal done. I think that he realizes now that, I mean, he's not in the same conversation, at least for now, as Justin Jefferson, who, you know, is about to get a good deal. I think that he should I think that he is just underneath the super elite receiver. But but he's still young, he can put his name in that bucket if he has another good season or two.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, he's definitely not in the tier of Justin Jefferson, who, you know, got paid handsomely. But I think that's another thing that complicated things in all this, because I think based on the market, Brandon Ayuk has every right to, you know, ask for a little more money, just seeing how that's kind of grown in the course
Right.
of the offseason. So John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan spoke with the media earlier today. I don't know if you caught any of it, but
I did. I did.
So what was your sense of that, right? Like, you said you think this is going to get done, but at several points, you know, they kind of underlined how tough this negotiation has been. And it felt like, in a way, they feel like it's been tougher than other negotiations, maybe.
Well, every year it's someone, right? Every year there's someone who they have to get. And like you said, that these are all good players who ball out and then they want to get paid. I get that. And I think they learned their lesson when Lynch came out and said before Vosa, it's like, we are absolutely 100% going to get it done. And today I heard Lynch say, we are going to get it done. Anything is possible. So he was hedging his bet a little bit, right? Like,
Yeah.
he says, we see him coming back, but I think he learned his lesson from that whole Nick Bosa thing. That's like, we want him to come back. We see him going forward. Anything is possible with football. I think he said, like, we're listening to anything, like we have our ears open, something like that. I'm not quoting exactly, but I see a little bit more of a hedging the bet kind of thing going on when Lynch was talking. I don't know if that has to do with Ayuk specifically, or if he's learned his lesson about talking to the press and never guaranteeing anything.
That's fair, but I mean, I get, like, in my opinion, like, for him to say we're listening and it's July 23rd, it's the first day of training camp. I'm like, what? Why are you saying that like this late? During the draft, I understood it. I'm like, okay, like that makes sense. You might get something nice in return you can use right away, but like this late, like, yeah, that made me a little uneasy. So there was a little of, yeah, like, we're optimistic. Conversations have been great, although like all of Brandon Ayuk's actions seem to suggest otherwise. And then there's, you know, John Lynch saying this. So I don't know, I guess, how to feel about it. I think it will get done too. To me, it's a good sign that Brandon Ayuk reported at all to training camp. But
Because, you know, what option does he have? I mean, I don't think anyone else is going to pay him what he's looking for. And if he doesn't play, his value goes down, right? I think that the best play for him is to play, ball out, and then get paid, right? Play this last year, ball out, and then get paid. Because if he sits out, his value goes down. I don't know if anyone, I mean, is there a team that's willing to pay him? I think he wants $30 million a year. And if he goes to a team like that, they probably are a team that's not winning right now and has a long
yeah,
way to go, right? I mean, how important is it for a couple of $1 million a year? And I say that in a blasé tone. I don't mean to be blasé about money, because I've never had that kind of money. But, you know, how important is it, worth it to take less money to be on a team that's going to be on America's TV screens in perpetuity? It seems like, right? It's going to be on Monday Night Football. It's going to be the national game of the week. It's going to be on our network, Fox. You know, the 49ers are big, big, big business, and he might even get endorsements. If he goes to play for a team that's, you know, kind of at the bottom of the barrel, I mean, he becomes almost invisible, you know, unless something miraculous happens. I mean, that's worth money.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know. You're kind of sounding like the 49ers right there. I think the 49ers would really like for him to play out this season and, let's just see what happens kind of thing. Kick the
Right,
can down the road another year. And they have
right.
that option, right?
They
They
do.
have
Well,
the
I mean,
fifth
and
year.
remember, they're gonna have to pay Brock Purdy coming up here, like, and I don't know how much.
Exactly.
It's gonna be $60 million at least, right? Or, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I don't,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. So, I mean,
I think that plays into all of this as well because we don't know what that deal's going to look like. We just know it's going to be 60 million plus, and they have to kind of budget for that now.
yeah. Um, I do think that these guys are young. I hope he's getting. I hope that Brandon Ayuk is getting some good advice. And I want to bring up the example of Caitlin Clark, who is playing for like $75,000 for that WNBA team, which I think is outrageous. However, she got a $28 million deal from Nike. So if Brandon Ayuk and Brock Purdy become high profile, he can get endorsements. I know I sound like the 49ers. I just think it's a little bit unrealistic for him to want to get paid like a Justin Jefferson or a tier 111A receiver now. I think he's a very, very good receiver. I think that he is being underpaid with the current contract. I think there could be some meeting in the middle.
No, I completely agree with you there. So, and it'd be nice, honestly, to have a larger sample size to make an even more educated decision
Mm.
on what to do with Brennan Ayuk. And I feel like they're they're not wanting to commit too much at this moment based on what they know so far. That's just a sense I get. But
And they had to pay McCaffrey. You're going to have to play Purdy. You have to pay Debo. Remember Debo? They had a thing with Debo. It was a couple of,
well,
yeah. I mean, he-
who well, that's kind of like the thing, right? Like I think it's clear both Debo, Brandon Ayuk are going to be with this team in 2024. I mean, their contracts pretty much say so. But beyond that, I mean, I don't know if they could afford to keep both Debo and Ayuk if Ayuk gets his, big deal. So like between those two guys, I mean, who is there one that you would want to keep between those two? Got to choose.
that's a really, really tough question because Debo's a one of a kind player. I think he makes defenses worry. You
Yeah.
saw that when he was out, the 49ers attack became a little bit less three-dimensional, if you will. I think that even if he doesn't do anything, he worries defenses. But I really do like the fact that Purdy and Ayuk have that connection, kind of like Montana and Rice. I mean, not exactly. Okay, I know people are watching. Oh, Montana and Rice were the best. Yes, they were. But I mean, a connection between a wide receiver and a quarterback and a favorite wide receiver is super important in this league. And he's not afraid to run down the middle, for gosh sakes. Not all these guys, they run outside routes. I mean, this guy can run down the middle. He can block. That's a tough question because if you get rid of Debo, you also get rid of another, if it's a multifaceted offense, he's definitely one of the facets, right? But I
Yep.
couldn't see getting rid of McCaffrey. I can't
No.
because that guy is a special player. So I mean, it's down to those two. I would have to think about that really. Gosh, tough
It's
question. I
tough.
mean,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
well,
tough.
let me turn it around on you. Well, who would you want to keep?
Well, and it is a very tough question, and I have thought of this several times. And in like the past year, because to me, like the writing has been on the wall, like you can't keep both. You're gonna only be able to afford to keep one of them. I just saw it as Debo is gonna be the odd man out. Like that's the way I saw it because he would be older by that time. He does deal with injuries every now and again.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know if did you watch the Netflix show Receiver, Sal? That
Yeah,
had okay. So I did too. And then watching that, I'm just like, man, like Debo is so special.
he
He's
is.
so
He is. You know what? He
one of a
is.
kind,
He's
like you said.
a specimen. Have you seen him
Yeah.
working out? Well, of course you did. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is like, I think that he has, there's an old movie where you can turn it up to 11. It's like a old cultural reference. Debo has turned it up to 11, right? On a 1 to 10. He is on a mission. He is jacked. He is running on the treadmill like, I thought he was gonna break that treadmill. I mean, I don't know what's gotten into him, but he is like trying to show the world even more. So after I saw that, I started thinking,
Right?
maybe Debo is the man that the 49ers need. And that did change my mind a little bit.
Yeah, I had the exact same thoughts because I know Brandon Ayuk is more of a traditional receiver, your wide receiver one. He can get open in man, probably get open in zone two. But like Debo is just there's something, it's like an intangible that like you just can't get from anyone else. We've seen so many times, like almost every draft, it's like, oh, this guy could be the next Debo. And then what
Mhm.
do we see happen? He's not that, because
Right.
Debo. And yeah, I have a hard time as well with that decision. And that's why I think like the 49ers want to just wait and see what happens after this year. Cause like I don't blame them, honestly. And watching receiver and seeing just how that Debo being out for those 3 games did impact the team, and especially in that Cleveland game where it seemed like he was going to have a big role that day. It felt like the team has a hard time pivoting away from Debo and what he brings to the team, just because it's so unique.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything like it in a while. I may be forgetting someone, but in the last, I don't know, 10 years, I haven't seen anyone like Debo. And as I said, I think that he gets into the other defensive coordinators' heads. And that's worth something. But he's also a joy to watch play. And now, after seeing what preparation he's making, I guess, I mean, just on the basis of this conversation we had just now, I'm going to have to pick Debo, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, as much as I love Brandon Ayuk, as you said, he's a traditional WR1. So there's other guys out there. I would hate for it to come to that, because I think that if they have both, obviously they can really do some work.
yeah, which is why, like, I think 2024 seems to be a good year. If you can work things out with Brennan Ayuk and you have Debo preparing like he is for this season, and obviously I think Debo knows he's like playing this season for his next contract or his
Mhm.
next, whatever team, or like, he knows this is a fork in the road for him.
Right.
So obviously he's preparing for it. It could be just the perfect mixture of things and competition internally that, I don't know. They could be cooking with gas here. So we'll see. And yeah,
I, I
as in
just think that if they have McCaffrey and Ayuk and Debo, Kyle Juszczyk, and Trent Williams on the line, and everything that they had going on, barring major injuries, and one more year under the belt of Brock Purdy, who went to the Super Bowl and lost in overtime. That's so now you can't say that kid is a rookie anymore. He played the whole season and got to the Super Bowl. Now we have a more experienced Brock Purdy, still under rookie money. This is the year.
Yeah, this is the year. And I was talking to my co-host on Monday, Weston. Yeah, I guess that was yesterday. And he was kind of saying that he could see this team blowing it up after this year if they were to win the Super Bowl in 2024. And it's like, you know what, that makes sense, because like then you don't feel as much pressure to like keep everything intact so you can keep competing. You have Brock Purdy, and you feel good enough with him and building a new team around him. So that's interesting. That's another reason why I think like they probably just want to see how 2024 plays out before making any,
Right.
crazy judgments about how to move
And
forward.
everyone's coming for the 49ers. I think that just because they lost the Super Bowl doesn't mean that the 49ers are off anyone's radar, right? So
Right.
that's the way it goes when you're a good team. That's the way it goes. That the people have circled that date we're going to play. They bring their best game, because if they beat the 49ers, now they're suddenly contenders. That's just the way it is. And I kind of like being in that position as a 49ers fan. I kind of like the attention. I work for a company who, this is a true story. I've worked for Channel 2 for 25 years. In 2015, Fox, Channel 2 was an affiliate, but not owned by Fox. Well, Fox Television decided that the NFC teams, specifically the 49ers and some of the higher ones, are worth buying all the television stations in those markets. So they came to San Francisco, Oakland, and they purchased KTVU because of the strength of the NFC and the exciting players. So the 49ers are big. I mean, they're big business, right? They're big national business. They're, this multi-million-dollar corporation, the 49ers are on their radar. Trust me, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's why I say Brandon Ayuk wants to play for this company, wants to play for this team. Young men like that don't realize how much visibility is important for your legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And, honestly, I think in the midst of contract negotiations and, having that one track mind to just the money. I get it. But yes, to your point, there's other factors and there's other things to think about as well. I mean, another aspect that I know some players think about every now and again is, hey, California, you pay a lot of taxes, and
Yikes.
there's some teams where you don't pay any.
Right.
So little things like that should be part of the decision
Yeah,
making.
I think that I mean, maybe that comes into if it's like on a tipping point. If you're going to be, let's say, maybe you have a starting offer with the Cowboys who play in Texas and the 49ers, and the Cowboys are another team that gets a lot of play, or maybe the Steelers. We're talking about the difference. But if you're going to go to a team that is struggling and has struggled, yeah, you're not paying taxes, but you're losing out on other things that come with being on a marquee team. That being said, I'm not absolving the 49ers of, they probably should have gotten this done earlier. They probably should have planned better, but it's hard. It's hard. Who knew that some of these players, I mean, when they went out and got McCaffrey, I thought he was going to be good. I didn't realize he was going to be that good, right? So now we have, like you said, we have a problem on our hands. It's a good problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one of those things that players should keep in mind among just being around this awesome team. They have a great coach in Kyle Shanahan, right? But I think we've kind of like talked about it before, maybe even danced around the question before of like, what is Kyle missing? Like, if he has any responsibility in getting this team over the hump, like, is there anything in your mind that he could do differently to get them there?
Well, sometimes he has really bad clock management. We all know that, right? Sometimes he seems to have he's overly conservative with the pieces that he has. And some of those games, I found myself screaming at the TV as to why he was being so conservative when it almost seems like he's not trusting the players who are ballers to make plays. But with that said, I think that because he didn't win the big one, and because he was the offensive coordinator when Brady mounted that really big comeback, maybe he's inside his head a little bit from every single time he's gotten to the promised land and fallen one short, right? I think he's a great coach. I think that if he would have won this year, all of that would be gone. I think if he would have won this year, I think he might even be a better coach this year, if that makes any sense, because some of the weight has been lifted. I think it's incredible to be carrying that weight, knowing that if I don't win a big one, my legacy is always going to win. It was always going to be, cannot win the big one. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. I mean, that's why when Steve Young ran around the field after winning that Super Bowl in '95, they asked him about it later. It's like he got the monkey off his back. That's an incredible monkey to get off your back, right?
Yeah, and I think he will eventually. It's just like I agree with everything you just said, that there are some things that I think he limits himself and his team when it comes to those like really really key moments in a game. He's just trying not to lose once he gets to a certain point, and
Right.
it like backfires. So
Yeah.
yeah,
With that said, though, I don't think that Kyle Shanahan is the reason that they lost. I think Kyle Shanahan's a good coach. I think the reason that they lost was Patrick Mahomes, and they played other good teams. I don't think, oh my God, if they only had a different coach, they would have won those Super Bowl. I don't think that at all. But I do think that Kyle Shanahan does have something within him that might be ever so slightly limiting him. And,
Yeah.
in professional sports, that ever so slightly thing matters because inches matter, everything matters.
To me, it's like it's a mental hurdle for him, like trust either in himself, in his players, like you were kind of saying, and yeah, I definitely agree. Rob D says Kyle is good, but what is he missing? The stash. He had that awesome mustache at Christian McCaffrey's wedding, and he said he shaved it off yesterday. Like, what is he doing? I felt like whatever was missing, it was in that stash. So I don't know. I wish he would have kept that one.
It's funny because those of us of a certain age remember his old man, right? And it's just a football family. Family. It's a football dynasty. I really like him. I really like John Lynch. I wouldn't change any of that. I just think that they have to keep plugging away. Sometimes you get some tough luck with some key injuries. So if you look at X, which used to be Twitter, and you look at some of the, falling off the ledge tweets, I don't really agree with that. I just think you have to stay the course and feel lucky that we are, as a 49ers team, where we are, or they are, because I'm not playing. But I think the 49ers and their fans should be lucky that this is the conversation we're having, instead of, being some other team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the grass is pretty green on this side. So despite, some heartbreaking moments, it's still pretty good. And like I said, I think we're feeling optimistic again about what's next for this team. So in your mind, Sal, what is next for this team? What are your expectations for 2024?
I think that even more of a focus, even more of a discipline, if that's possible, is coming into 2024. I think that from the moment that Kyle Shanahan walked off that field, when they were doing the ticker tape for the other team, he started drawing up plans. He probably already has what he thinks he didn't do right. He probably already has, okay, let's get with the trainers, let's make these guys even stronger. Let's game plan, because he's such a great game planner. I think that it's just even more discipline. We're not going to see a lot of changes. It's going to be doing the 49ers thing, if you will, just with more discipline and more focus. That's what I think is coming.
And for me, I'm excited for this year to see Brock Purdy, because I think like what you're saying is true, and I think Brock Purdy has a big hand in that as well. Like
Mhm.
I'm ready for him to take a larger like leadership role with
Right.
this team,
To put,
command of
yeah,
not even just offense, but the defense as well. Like, hey, anyone needs a little pep talk, hype them up.
Mhm.
Like Brock could do that.
Right. So what I said earlier, and I think you and I both agree, this 1 year for him that he had just had has been huge. Last year, the conversation or the narrative, is like people in sports like to say, was, what can he really do? Now we know what he can do. Now he's no longer a rookie, not even close. Last year, I don't know. It seemed like there were some still doubters. Now we know what the kid can do. All he needed was more experience. Now he has more experience. Now what I'd like to see from him is to occasionally put the team on his back
Yeah.
and carry them across, like every quarterback that's of a certain level, Steph, you see that quarterback put the team on their back on certain games. And you know what, when you see it, it's not necessarily in the stats. If you watch a lot of football, like we all do for watching this podcast, we watch football. We know what it looks like when a quarterback puts a team on his back, right? And I want to see more of that.
Yeah, I think we will. We've seen like small glimpses of it, right? And I saw it a lot in the game against the Lions in the playoffs, like
Mhm. Exactly.
fourth down, taking it and running it,
That
and
last
I'm
series
gonna
he
get this
had, right?
first
And
down.
people
It
were
was
like on the
incredible.
Lions, because I had some Lions fans who were friends who were just like losing their minds because they thought they should have been in that Super Bowl. It was really a satisfying feeling. Um, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, if he can play that way, we can win against anyone, Patrick Mahomes included. And he came up short. But again, he's young. That's the great thing about Purdy, is he's young. So even if they were to blow up the team, that's going to be one of the cornerstones, right? And assuming that, God forbid he gets hurt, Sam Darnold is gone. So I don't know who, we have to have someone competent because of what happened the year before. I hate thinking about backup quarterbacks after what happened a few years back. So I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that the kid has a really great year and goes from being a really good quarterback and maybe starts taking steps to becoming elite.
Yeah, I think so, and he's in large part why I'm so excited for this season, and why I think I will be for several years going forward, and just seeing that growth. But yeah, I'm excited for 2024, and what's going to come with it, all the drama, all the stress. Again, I'm ready for it. So, but Sal, thank you so much for joining me today, and talking about this season, because I think
Isn't it great to be able to talk for more than 3-minute TV segment?
Yeah, I mean,
that whole TV
I
thing.
remember
Yeah, that
the
whole TV thing. We have good chemistry on TV, right? Because we both know each other, we like each other, and at the very least, we pack a lot of in. Sometimes they like you so much, by the way, on Channel 2. They get excited when you're going to come on. So sometimes they'll give me 4 minutes. Oh
oh,
boy.
nice. Oh, good.
Right? But it is nice to have these long form discussions because you can get into nuance. When it comes to
Yeah.
TV sports, it's like 1, 2, or 3 of the most pressing issues. If I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to have you on this week, probably the conversation is going to be mostly about, is Ayuk coming back, and is Brock Purdy the guy for the future, right? What do you think the biggest questions are? Pick 2 questions for me and I'll use them. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Like, yeah, you're giving me a little teaser of what to expect. No, I was going to say that I remember the first time that I was on with you, I think that was a huge adjustment for me, like the getting it down to like 2 sentences, like very concise, right? Same way you wanted to say. I had like all these notes and like things that I want to say in my head, and I just didn't think about that my answers had to be much shorter. So I think
Mhm.
I've gotten better about it over time. But yeah.
Well, and I'll leave you with this. Remember, a lot of the people who watch sports are not like us, that we got a little depth chart. Let's see. Oh, Charvarius Ward, blah, 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 blah. All these stats. No, they're not like that. They watch, especially if the team is good. There's a lot of eyeballs, but a lot of them are casual fans, and they're looking for
Right.
us to just kind of like break through all the noise and tell them the 3 most important things about that week, so they can go to the water cooler and tell their friends something that they heard, people like us saying, oh, Brandon Ayuk may not be coming back, right? And now it sounds at the water cooler like they're paying attention. That's our job, and I like that job. But it's not like this. It's not like the people who are watching this right now who are like waiting for more nuance.
Right. Yep. So this is fun. And as Technic Chic has said, I need to bring you on more often. So
Thank you very much.
so yeah, we'll have to work on that this season as well. But Sal, thank you so much for joining me. Excited again to talk 49ers with you, not just today, but whenever you have me on for this season as
It'll be
well.
this week. Just to keep your
All
phone.
right,
I'll text you later.
all right, we'll talk. But thank you everyone that tuned in, kept the live chat popping. Appreciate all of you. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, have a good rest of your Tuesday, folks. Peace.